All right, what is up, traders? What's up, tycoons? Super excited for today's video. Coming at you guys with some requests from the Discord. We have race right here, so good old Ferrari. We'll break down the weekly time frame and then zoom in a little bit to a daily time frame so you guys can get a better idea. We're going to do the same thing with Cisco. Man, this thing has really just recovered after its recent drop on earnings. It's still lots of room potentially to the upside. So we're going to go over the upside potential as well as the support levels to the downside. And to get a clearer picture, we'll zoom out again to the weekly time frame where we could see a cup and handle forming. Now, the last one we've gotten is MDB, which also could be another potential cup and handle. We're seeing lots of cup and handles. There's a couple different ways you could draw these trend lines, such as right here or such as like this. So we'll break down the both of those and then zoom in once again to a daily time frame where, yet again, another potential cup and handle. So we're seeing lots of cup and handles on the current charts that we're looking at. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into those and really break them down in today's video. So be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. As always, the content provided on this channel is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be relied upon as legal, financial, or investment advice. So please be sure to read through the disclaimer. All right, if you're new to the channel, I actually started a completely free newsletter for you guys called Investment Intelligence, giving out free valuable trade ideas, free valuable content. And these are what the trade ideas will look like, right? Highlighting the chart conditions, showing you guys the actual chart itself, and explaining everything to you. I try to choose quality over quantity. So I'm not spamming you guys with 5 to 10 different penny stocks every single day, bragging about one or two of them hitting. Rather, we're looking for high quality setups, going over this one right here with the rising wedge, and then going over the conditions on the RSI and the MACD, breaking down all of that for you guys, and then showing you where the stock could potentially head. And you can see that trade idea worked out very, very nicely, as many of the trade ideas in the newsletter have. So sign up for that. It's completely free. You'll enjoy it if you enjoy free, valuable content and free trade ideas. Or you can just sign up for the Investment Intelligence Discord. That's where you get access to all the different trade ideas and analysis, such as these plays. We had Carnival. We recently, yesterday, just closed a short position on gold. So many different trade ideas available, as well as custom scripts and indicators. And really, you can look at the strategy that I use to day trade S&P 500 options. Join that using the link in the description. Now let's go ahead and start off here with race. Okay, good old Ferrari, looking at the weekly time frame. And this chart is definitely bullish. Okay, so don't mistake anything I'm about to tell you guys. It's consistently making highs, and higher highs. But here currently at the moment, if you look, we made that high and higher high, and at the same exact points on the RSI, we made a high and then a lower high. So this is a term known as bearish divergence. It's an indicator you could see some type of bearish activity. Now keep in mind, at the initial touch of this bearish divergence, we did get a pullback. Now, what's also important is that we were trading outside of the Bollinger Bands. So we really had two conditions here suggesting that we're overbought. Anytime that we're trading outside of the Bollinger Bands, it's very normal to see them spring back in. But the thing you want to be mindful of trying to short this, bullish stock right now is that, look at what happens when you're typically riding the top Bollinger Band. It tends to hover right around there. And so you do want to be cautious if you're trying to short this right now, that, hey, we could just potentially hover and hover and hover. And the bullish price target on the weekly time frame is going to be 412. Now remember, that's a weekly time frame, so it's not like it's going to happen next week or within a matter of days. That would take time for it to progress and develop. Now, does seem like it would be due for a little bit of a pullback, okay, just because we're so far up on the Bollinger Bands. But you want to be, careful shorting this, right? Just because it's at the top Bollinger Band and just because we have bearish divergence doesn't necessarily mean it's a short. We'll go over some conditions to potentially short it once we zoom into the daily time frame. But really, if you look at your weekly MACD, this is just showing strength. Price action is showing strength. And we're just seeing, signs of strength right now at the moment. If we were to break out of this bearish divergence trend line on the RSI, that would basically be a signal that, hey, the price on the stock could potentially continue heading up higher and closer towards that 412 price target. Now, to zoom in on the daily is where you can get a little bit more clarity. So first off, we want to establish we have a high, and then we have a higher high, and we have a high and a lower high in the RSI. So you can see we have that same bearish divergence, and same thing as the weekly time frame. If we were to break out of there, okay, our bullish price target on the daily time frame is going to be 380.69, and that would be a signal potentially that, hey, we could be heading up towards that bullish price target. Now, there's many gaps down to fill. There's one, two, three. All right, that is relatively close to the price of the stock. All right. And you want to be cautious of those because gaps tend to fill about 90% of the time. Okay. The big question with gaps, right, is going to be when. When do these gaps fill? And if you take a look, these are all basically just breakaway and runaway gaps, right? You're not really seeing an exhaustion gap where, we gap up and then reverse back down and fill the gap. That would be an exhaustion gap. So if you're trying to short this, you really need to see some type of a break of trend. So if we look here, we bounce one, two, three times. If we pull back, that gives us right at our 50% retracement of the recent lows to the highs of this recent move. That's going to be at 362.79. And that's another area potentially where we could bounce again and try to continue heading up bullish. Now, if we break that trend line and flip it to resistance, that's when you could potentially look for some shorts because we know we have bearish divergence and now we're seeing a recent break of trend. Okay. And at the moment, the MACD is, down. All right. We did have a bearish crossover here, but you can see that that bearishness already kind of played out. And at the moment, it's flatlining and attempting to potentially even curl up. So if we get a bullish MACD crossover and we get the RSI break out of its daily bearish divergence, that's when we can see again that 380 price target to the upside potentially hit. All right. So, if we break here, flip to resistance, that's when you can look to target the first gap down to fill, which is going to be right around 350. Okay. Below there, all right, there's still lots of room for this stock to, have a pullback and still potentially be bullish as well, and really just have the bearish divergence play out, maybe even fill a couple of these gaps. Okay, so below the gap fill at 350, all right, we have support at 334, 328, and then there's another gap down to fill right around 325. Okay, and below there, we have one more gap, which is going to be right around the 200-day moving average. So keep in mind this 200-day moving average is going to continue creeping up, right? And if we were to start creeping, if price was to start falling down, most likely this 200-day moving average would be at the top of this gap right here, which is going to be around 317-ish, roughly, somewhere around in there. We'll just have to see. So that's really what I'm looking at for race. It's bullish on a weekly and a daily time frame. We have some bearish signals, but no confirmation of a change in trend or no confirmation of bearishness yet. Now, when we look at Cisco, okay, Cisco really had a huge, massive gap down to fill, right? Or a gap up to fill. We gap down huge from, like 53.50 all the way down to 48. And, we can see we've already started to fill a good portion of that gap. Now, this level here, 48.40, was a very strong resistance, right? And it was stuck there for a while, forming this ascending triangle. And eventually we broke out. So let's say Cisco was to pull back. Okay, you can see there's a small gap right here to fill to the downside. If it was to pull back, you would look for a retest of 48.40, okay, to potentially continue heading higher and fill the rest of that gap. Now notice our trend lines here, okay, and we're basically, above our bullish trend line, and we're still below the longer term bearish trend line here. So if we were to keep rallying and continue filling this gap to the upside, 50.81 is going to be resistance, along with your 200-day moving average is going to be very close to that 50.81 price level by the time we move up to it. And then from there, we're going to have to battle that trend line. Okay, if we can break out of the trend line and go for the rest of the gap fill, 52.22 is going to be resistance as well. And then the top of the gap right around 53 there. Above 53, we have 53.64 as resistance. And then yet again, one more gap up to fill here, right above $55. So, it seems like there's lots of upside potential. We got a bullish MACD crossover. The RSI is still below 50. So if you want to see, future bullishness, you'd like to get that above 50 and show some more signs of strength here. And if we were to pull back, right, and let's say we pull back and we break below 48.40, well, that's not the end of the road, end of the world scenario. We have support at 47.93 and 47.53, and that would set up for a potential look below and fail scenario, which again would be a bullish signal. Now, of course, if we break through that support level and break through that support trend line, you would look for a break and retest as a potential short entry, and then, the false breakdown or look below and fail for a potential re-entry, right? Where you can, manage your risk pretty well and set, a tight stop loss entering in around those levels. If we zoom out again to the weekly time frame, and talk about it. What are some potential signals we can look for? Well, the MACD is certainly not bullish. It looks like it could be attempting to flatten out, but we'll have to see how that develops. If we break this trend line here on the RSI, that could be a good sign that, hey, maybe the stock potentially can break out from this trend line here recently. Okay, it's that same downtrend that we were looking at on the previous time frame. But just on a weekly chart now. Now we've got this overhead supply here, but this really looks like it could be a cup and handle, right? We've had this nice little bottom pattern form. We had an aggressive pullback, okay? And if we were to come back and retest that supply zone, that would be our handle, right? So let's say we do happen to get a break, retest, push higher, and come up towards this $58 area, 56 to about 58. That's that overhead supply. That's where we're going to have the handle, okay? And if we can break out above there, then we can revisit some of the recent highs up towards $65. So, there's lots of potential in this one. You want to look for an initial sign of strength on the weekly RSI, see if we can get that breakout to the upside. Now, MDB is another one. It seems like it could have a little bit of a cup and handle here as well. There's a couple ways to draw the trend lines, and people draw trend lines differently. You do want to question though, is this a look above and fail scenario here where we tried to break out and now we're coming back down lower within the range? That's definitely a possibility, something you want to think about, and that aligns more with the bearish divergence, right? If you take a look, we have lows, we have we have highs, we have lower highs, and we have highs, and we have higher highs. So, there is some bearish divergence, and if that's a look above and fail scenario, most likely you're going to see that bearish divergence play out even more than it already did, where we saw this huge red weekly candle. But if we were to draw this a different way and just take a look at this trend line here, this could be a very textbook and clean breakout, retest, and now we're pushing higher. Okay. And so if that's the case, we would look for us to find some support and potentially head up here above the 520 level for a nice gap up to fill. Okay, on the weekly time frame. The RSI is pretty choppy here at the moment. And when the RSI chops, it tends to follow the trend. Okay, whatever the trend was heading into it. So the trend heading into this is bullish. And as the RSI chops around before it makes its next big move, we could just see the stock continue to chop around higher as well. If you take a look in the past, when the RSI was real choppy throughout this period here, what was it in? Well, it was in a downtrend. Okay. So that's the weekly time frame here. All right, we do have that bearish divergence similar to the other ones. If we can break out of that divergence, that could be a potential sign of strength. But if we zoom in here to the daily does look like, yet again, another cup and handle. We have this nice little rounded bottom here. Okay, we pulled up to a similar level of resistance, and now we're getting our pullback. And what's really interesting is we did a good job of holding this 50% retracement level here. We dipped down below it, but we held right back above it again here recently. This purple line is what's known as an anchored VWAP. So we have price anchored to the gap up price, right? Where you can see we have the price here and then it gaps up. And if you take a look, we're actually holding it as support and holding above this anchored VWAP, and it's starting to curl upwards. So I think that above this anchored VWAP, which is actually at the bottom of this daily gap here at 380, I think we do have the chance to push higher. Now, if we flip this anchored VWAP here, that's when I think that the more bearish scenario happens, and we could see a pullback towards the 200-day moving average, which is going to be around 340 to 345 as it's going to continue creeping up. So we've got an anchored VWAP here that's trying to get into an uptrend. We've got a rising 200-day moving average. So those two signs are bullish. We've got the nice cup here, and we're going to look to see if this can develop into a handle. Okay. And if that's possible, then, we could get that weekly chart scenario to play out where we see it push up higher and potentially head up to those 520s. Now, remember, these larger time frames are going to take a much longer time for those trades to play out. So it's not like that's going to happen within the next week or two. That's going to take time to develop. A more, closer bullish trade would be the first initial gap fill up here right around 420. Okay, good old 420. So that pretty much wraps up today's charts. If you enjoyed this analysis, feel free to book me on my Ko-Fi page, okay, using the link in the description to access that. You click on commissions right here and you can book a 30-minute or you can book a 1-hour session directly with me. I do these sessions all the time. You can also request a YouTube video on a specific topic of your choice, or you can click on this buy a coffee button, basically as a way to leave a tip or donation for the free valuable content I do put out there, such as the investment intelligence newsletter, which you're going to want to sign up for using the link in that description. And you can also sign up using the link in the description for the investment intelligence Discord. That's where you get access to all of the different trade ideas, not just one or two a week, as well as the custom scripts, indicators, and valuable other resources that we have available in the Discord.